The Workers and Socialist Party in South Africa has also echoed sentiments that the elections in Zimbabwe were rigged. The party's executive committee member, Ndumiso Ncube, joins us now for more. Ndumiso, very good evening to you. On what grounds do you believe that the result from the elections in Zimbabwe has not been an honest one, that it was orchestrated, basically?
Good evening to you and to your viewers. These elections were clearly just a sham. They were a joke. If we look at the campaigning period, the amount of rallies, opposition rallies that were banned is probably close to 100. Additionally, there have been several pieces of legislation that have been, released and amended by the government, which basically limit the political space and the political freedoms that people have. And furthermore, we saw the irregularities on the day of voting, on the day of elections, whereby there were ballot papers missing, ink missing. And remember, they had years to prepare for this. ZAC had many years to prepare for these elections. And it is clear that, ZANU-PF had no intention to really contest a democratic election. Remember, they actually issued no manifesto ahead of these elections because their rule is underpinned by guns. It is underpinned by support from the military, and it is not based on the support or a mandate from the people.
Well, the ZANU-PF party today, even in its briefing and even in the comments made by President Mnangagwa, basically says that even the disruptions that were there on voting day were minimal. They also said that if they were not interested in giving a fair chance to the opposition to get the votes from the public in Zimbabwe, there would not, for example, have been the extension of voting for another day when issues were reported at some of the polling stations. At this point, is there any point, I wonder, in the people, the likes of Nelson Chamisa, planning to go to court to try and challenge this outcome?
Remember that when military juntas take power in a coup, for them it is important to try to solidify a sense of legitimacy, and oftentimes they'll do this through elections, they'll rig elections. It's part of the history of coups in Africa. We can read through the history. So it is not unsurprising that they would have taken this route. And however, as you've alluded to, it is, hoping that, the courts will give a favorable outcome to the people of Zimbabwe is quite, there's a very thin chance that, those hopes will be successful. However, the solution lies in the people of Zimbabwe themselves. The solution lies in the working class. It lies in the masses, the majority of people taking a stand against these rigged elections.
Are you suggesting mass protests?
More of a general strike, because remember, at the end of the day, it is the workers who create the value in society, not the military. It is not, the ZANU-PF regime that creates the wealth in society. The wealth that is in society, it is the workers when they, through the process of them applying their labor to raw materials, that is how value is created. That is how the economy is able to move. So if the military regime is saying that they have won these elections, but clearly the people are not happy, then what else should we wait for? Instead, we need to have more mobilization of the working class. There is no time to be sad and to bemoan that these elections have been stolen. Mm-hmm. Instead, the time has come for the people to mobilize. If you do not organize, you will starve.
I wonder, though, how much appetite there is for that in Zimbabwe, because every time we've seen industrial action or any worker-led protest, even when there was the doctor strike, which wasn't necessarily about an election outcome or even the post-election violence in the last 5 years, there's been basically a crackdown by the security forces and people have been injured, and in some instances, people have died. So would people want to risk their lives when they know that even after you've seen others pouring onto the streets to speak out, little changes, but often at a very high cost?
So I think it's important for us to remember that there's no bullets, no gun, no AK-47, R5 assault rifle, no bazooka, no nuclear weapon, and definitely no ZANU-PF that can kill an idea whose time has come. And the thirst for freedom, the thirst for liberation will always drive the masses. The people will always fight back. And it is unfortunate that, the ruling party has continued to act in the way that it has. However, these struggles are not going to be solved by more violence and more police brutality. Instead, we have to look at the problems, the core of the problems, we have to look at what is it that is going wrong with the way that the economy is set up? What is it that is going wrong with the way that the political landscape in the country is? And ultimately, the only true solution is one that is based on democratic, worker-led control of the economy and the commanding heights of the economy. So, in as much as there are a lot of challenges that are facing the working class, the reality is that the class struggle continues. And Amilcar Cabral told us that we should not tell the people any lies. We should not claim any easy victories. And the revolution is not an apple or a fruit that will just fall from the sky. It is something which people have to organize for. We have to work towards it. And it is only on the basis of the workers moving, led by a revolutionary program, that they can actually win the final victory.
And who would lead that? Organizations such as yourself? And if so, what would be the place or the role of the main opposition, for example, led by people like Nelson Chamisa? Would you work hand in hand?
The point that I'm trying to get to here is it has to be the working class. It has to be the people that lead the movement. And there are organizations, there are trade unions, there are civic organizations, they are already mobilizing on the ground. The point is to unite behind a revolutionary program. And this is not to say that there is absolutely, no hope for any other kind of, solidarity. But first and foremost, it starts with the workers, the communities organizing themselves. And there are serious difficulties, serious challenges that they're facing. But if they're not united, they cannot overcome these. And at the same time, there is also a call for, international solidarity from working class people across the world. Last year, during the Clover strike, we saw people taking time to go and protest, in other parts of the world, in the UK, in other countries, in support and in solidarity with the Clover workers, based on the understanding that in order for there to be a genuine victory for the workers, it has to be rooted in, solidarity, of course, and it has to be geared towards bringing about a society that actually puts the interest of the working class first.
But why would the governing party care? I ask that because for the last almost 30 years, there's been global condemnation of the ZANU-PF-led government from the Mugabe days into the Mnangagwa years. The international sanctions remain in place. As you say, there have been demonstrations at home and elsewhere against what's going on in the country. Yet the ZANU-PF remains unshaken. Why would it care now, when it believes especially that it's won free and fair?
So it's very important to emphasize once more that there's a dire need for a working class alternative in the situation. An alternative that will actually direct the anger and the frustrations of the masses, towards the reforms and the actions that need to be taken. Look, it's not about, remember, like I mentioned earlier, the military, they're not the ones who create the world. They're not the ones who have to work on the farms and actually dig for the gold and the lithium, which then gets, siphoned off to other countries in order to make a few billionaires even more money. They're not the ones who do that. It is the workers, the ones who actually control, the production of the value. So if they're able to be united under the correct program, under a correct socialist and revolutionary program, there is no limit to what they can achieve. You remember the greatest event in human history, the October Revolution of 1917, was carried out by workers in a backward country that also had a repressive authoritarian, dictatorship in place, that of, the emperor of Russia.
There is the ever-recurring question whenever you look at the political situation in Zimbabwe about what SADC is doing, most notably South Africa, because of geographic location, as well as the fact that most Zimbabweans who are fleeing home come to South Africa for healthcare services, for employment, etc. Is there still a role for South Africa and the broader SADC region to play in bringing about stability in Zimbabwe? In the last hour, we spoke to Nelson Chamisa, who was saying even the South African government will be lobbied by the opposition post this election, which they're unhappy about.
So it is quite unfortunate that in the last 2 years, there were so many incidences of xenophobic violence in South Africa, and there were so many incidences of, migrants being scapegoated for things that, working class people turning on one another, fighting among one another, despite the fact that the capitalist system is exploiting all of us. It is important for, there to be this international solidarity that I'm referring to. Unfortunately, in the past, the AU, SADC, and other bodies have not really been able to stand up to the tyranny of ZANU-PF. And the result at the end of the day is that the economic collapse just keeps on continuing. The economic deterioration in Zimbabwe just keeps on continuing, and this, of course, leads to other issues. For example, when it comes to the healthcare system in Zimbabwe, it is in shambles. Basic procedures, just childbirth, giving birth. The fact that if you have to give birth, it is a difficulty in Zimbabwe. It means that it puts extra pressures on the working class. It puts extra pressures on the people, and then later on, you hear stories of people attacking, migrants, saying that they're the cause for the problems in South Africa. However, there is an opportunity to stand up, to this sham of an election, point it out for what it really is, tell no lies, because what is happening here is there is a military junta that is trying to legitimize its rule through an election that was clearly rigged. So if, the regional bodies do not take any defiant stance against this, it will be, marked, in the books of history that they are being complicit in the continuing economic and political instability in Zimbabwe. But ultimately, it is the workers who have to also show solidarity with the people of Zimbabwe. It is the working class and the poor countries who also face similar difficulties.
Ndumiso Ncube with the Workers and Socialist Party speaking to us tonight. Thank you for your time.